Hello there, you're welcome along. So we are just on the full-time whistle between Lions and Brumbies. The Lions, the Brumbies, take a pick. 36 points to 24 for the Lions. It was mixed, as in keeping with the Lions' performances thus far. We're going to hear from Ruaidhri O'Connor, who's at the stadium in Canberra, where it's quite chilly. And Eddie O'Sullivan was watching as well from the comforts of home. So we'll chat to the boys in a moment. Our rugby coverage, as ever, with thanks to Energia. They sponsor rugby in Ireland at all levels, grassroots with the Energia AL, and they are the official energy partner to Leinster, Connacht, the Irish men's and women's teams, and their Rugby for All initiative welcomes everyone of all abilities to participate in the game. Energia.ie/rugby is where you can learn more about their exclusive home offers. Will Slattery, like myself, was watching in the office. Hello.
Hey, Joe.
So, like I said, 36-24... There were 8 Irish starters. This was very much Irish contingent, nailing down places, we think, for the first test. Ringrose and Aki were in midfield. Both played very well. Ringrose in particular. James Lowe was all action. Should have scored a try, but then did score a try. Gibson Park, he's nailed on, very assured. Sheehan overthrew one line out, which led to a Brumbies try, but was otherwise all action. Furlong, I think, warming to the task. Joe McCarthy, again, busy. He is the bolter of the group, really. And Jack Conan, good hands for the low try, and he was very solid. So tries from Ollie Chesham after they conceded a try, as is their way, the Lions. They don't like to start off until the other team has scored first. Ollie Chesham, then James Lowe. Again, that was all Irish hands, plus Finn Russell. Really good try. Marcus Smith took advantage of a Brumbies gift just on the halftime whistle, which kind of turned a 2-point gap at halftime into a 9-point gap at halftime. Ringrose with try of the game. A great break from him in midfield. Gave it to Smith. Smith kicked through. Ringrose ran on and finished. And then Josh van der Fleer from close range. On 3 other occasions, the Lions were held up. They were light at breakdown. Few handling errors, as is their way. And 1 or 2 dodgy restarts. Blair Kinghorn very much included, but then he went off injured. So Hugo Keenan, I would think, feeling better about life. Marcus Smith came on a full back, didn't do especially well there defensively, at fault for one of the tries. They're my headline notes. What did you make of it?
And it's such an impressive amount of notes. I'm just seeing you're flicking through like 20 pages of notes.
Look at this.
Like
I got one of these multicoloured. Do you hear that clicking list?
Yeah.
It's one of those.
So you didn't need much other than the red pen for some portions, is it? Is that how it was?
I wrote things Lines related in red.
Okay, that's how you're doing it.
It's a little bit OCD.
Those pens are fun.
Do you know, I saw Andy Farrell at one the other day, and I thought, I'm going to get one of them.
Yeah.
Just for the Lions month.
Look, they stood the test of time.
Also, the printers here weren't working.
I always get to go the old-fashioned way.
Went old-fashioned.
Because that's why it's so giant in my eye, because you usually have, like Joe kills around a 3 a day.
Wow, easy.
You print out so many sheets.
Easy.
That's the secret to your success.
I do recycle them, but yeah, they're my notes. And also, I was watching on my laptop, so I couldn't flick between a Word doc and the Now TV business.
What do I make of it? I suppose I'm very much looking at these games through a trial match, test match selection kind of prism. Like, I'm not coming away with sweeping takeaways about how they might play against Australia necessarily, or whether the kind of overall mistakes they'll make might translate to, or areas might translate to the test series. I'm really looking at it more to who played well. Like, other than the fact that there's been generally a degree of sloppiness in all the games, which is definitely a through line you can draw through, which I didn't expect to see today with the test quote unquote selection. That is the one thing that did jump out to me, because
I felt they were less sloppy. This was the least sloppy performance of the tour so far.
Yeah, which is probably true, but at the same time, they should have won. They only won by 12 points, and they didn't take a lot of chances. They did create a couple of times, held up a couple of tries. Even the game ended with Ollie Chesham not getting a try. James Lowe was held up in a situation where he probably should have scored.
And against a side stricken of 8 Wallabies, they did concede 4 tries.
They did, yeah. I know it's funny how much you read into it. Like these midweek games and these Saturday games, like come the test series, you won't remember them after they exist for like the equivalent of one podcast episode, and then they're just gone from your memory pretty quickly. Like, I think this test selection, you're going through the Irish guys you did already. I think a lot of them probably copper fast in their place in the team.
Same. I think every one of those guys is now in for the test. Ringrose, Aki, yes. Lowe, yes. Gibson Park always in. Sheehan always in. Furlong, body is holding up just fine. Joe McCarthy continued his good, energetic form. Conan, absolutely. And now I think Hugo Keenan's in at 15. So I think we have 9 starters, and you didn't feel Curry lit it up. So Van der
Oh,
Fleer,
yeah.
we could have 10 starters.
Could have Van der Fleer. Like, you don't know how he might go with Matt Hansen and Tommy Freeman, Ellis Genge and Andrew Porter. I feel like politically, notwithstanding the fact that Genge and Freeman have had good tours, I'm not saying this would be the only reason he might do this, but like I think you have to keep Genge and Freeman in the team for just a political reasoning. Because I think you're going to have at least 9.
Well, we had 8 today, so
Yeah.
make that 9
Keenan.
if Kinghorn is out. So if you just even make that straight swap of Hugo Keenan
Yeah.
for Kinghorn, you've 9 Irish, you've 1 Scot, albeit at least it's Russell. So I
Yeah.
think they'll be happy to have the general running the team.
He's the
But it's,
fulcrum.
yeah, 1 Scot and 5 English, 0 Welsh.
And it's hard to see Jack Morgan getting back in, even though he actually got man of the match in his last game. Just he hasn't featured in the 2 matches since. So this kind of like the final trial this Saturday against a fairly strong Australia-New Zealand selection. So, you know, there's a couple of guys who might get into the 23, but I find it hard to see anyone who didn't play today.
He will, like if things don't go well here and he goes with 9 or 10 Irish, I mean, there will be uproar. If they don't go well.
But if they lose and there's 8 Irish, still be uproar.
That's what I mean, if they don't go well. Oh, 8. Yeah,
So,
8,
so like
8, 9, 10, either way.
But like, notwithstanding any idea of he might overpick the Irish, like Ireland have been the best team. So 8 Irish in a test team wouldn't be unusual. 8 of the strongest nation would be par for the course.
Yeah.
So like, it's only if he goes to double digits.
I had thought there was room potentially for Hugh Jones to Pilatu. I don't think there's a huge amount between the 4 of them. I think they're all going pretty well. But after today,
Yeah.
Ringrose was so good.
So good, yeah.
And I think you do want partnership there increasingly. And Aki, look, he'd 1 or 2 moments, drop ball into Conan, fired one over the touchline bizarrely, but in the main,
The physical punch he
looks
brings.
good. So like that's a 4-shot swing in terms of
It
numbers.
is. Yeah, no, definitely. Like it is. And like, you know, yeah, number 7 is kind of up for grabs. And like, he was a hazard to fortune. It's like, you know, Conan is the only number 8 they have, really. So he had to play. Full back has just been very much up in the air because of injuries and form. Like, Gibson Park is the form 9 and has been for years. Like, to be fair, Porter would have been nailed on before the tour. He probably won't start now. So there has been a little bit of flux.
Yeah.
Joe McCarthy is a bit of a bolter.
Yeah.
But then again, the other 2 options were probably Irish as well, maybe, the next favourites off the rank. It's just the nature of the form lines to some degree.
I guess it follows. Like if they had the most number of Irish in the squad, so it's going to follow that they're in the team.
Because like who is the non-Irish player that we're like we'd say, oh, he definitely should be there, and Farrell is maybe not going with them. There's no one that I can think of thus far who's playing well that should be there that isn't in the reckoning. Jack Morgan is the one guy. Say if he doesn't make the 23 after getting a man of the match performance, he's the one guy who I'd be like, oh, him not being selected entirely would be harsh.
Yeah, maybe it's just at centre. And in my heart of hearts, I do think Ringrose and Aki are better. But Tua Pilatu and Hugh Jones had that nice moment of connection the last day, the no-look pass.
Yeah.
You know, if you were thinking politically. But then again, if you bring in Owen Farrell, I don't think you are.
Yeah. Well, like those centres have played each other head to head a large number of times.
I think it's the 2 Irish, really. That's me looking. That's if you were looking for a political way of beefing things up. So we'll talk to Eddie and Rory in just a second. Like I said, the 2 pick of the tries low on 28 minutes, and it really did go. Great hands, Joe McCarthy. Yeah, I haven't seen McCarthy doing that. It's brilliant. And it went to Finn Russell. Then it went to Aki. Ringrose, great short line off him, carried. Then it went to Dan Sheehan. He drew a man. Then it went to Conan. Again, Conan, a bit like the last day, although his hands didn't need to be as quick today. He sort of steadied things up and then gave it to Lowe. Is like, oh, that's what Finn Russell playing for Ireland would look like.
In a line, yeah. And like people have always asked the question, what would Finn Russell look like behind a fully international pack? And I have to say, he has looked very good.
He's looked brilliant. He did 2 things. There was one, you might have noticed it, where just because he loves throw the ball over 2 players pass, loop pass, he flung it out to a completely isolated James Lowe in the first half, who caught it standing start and just done it. It was just turnover. Like, you know, tackled 3 Brumbies and overtook the ball. Finn Russell's like, sorry, mate. And Sam Morton's like, he was a bit isolated there, no kidding. And then he kicked one out in the full. But other than that, he's really not overplaying his hand.
Yeah. But he's always been good picking off weaker opposition. Like, he's been phenomenal for Bath this season. And look, they won the Premiership, so I'm not saying it was weak opposition the whole way, but the defences in the Premiership are quite weak, and he looks absolutely phenomenal. It's not that long ago that at Twickenham he was having a really poor game in the Six Nations and costing Scotland the game, arguably. And I would argue when he's had to step up to the very, very top of international rugby, I'm talking about South Africa, All Blacks, and Ireland in the last couple of years. He's generally been quite good against England. He's a good record against England. He has struggled.
Yeah.
Champions Cup final with Rascal against Exeter Chiefs, he had a bit of a blow up that game as well. So I'll be fascinated to see if he can this should be his moment. Like he there's no excuses. He has the forward pack. He has unbelievable backside side, in which he generally does at international level too. So that'll be an interesting kind of test case for if he is more mature and if he can kind of handle this.
Yeah. I guess it's not South Africa or New Zealand.
That's it. It's Australia. Sorry. So but even because his record against Australia is good as well.
Yeah. So that kind of that undercuts a lot of this tour. We'll touch on that with Ruaidhri and Eddie, because I'm not sure this tour is quite catching fire just yet. That said, and the reason we wanted in part for this conversation is you are conducting a watch along for the first test. So on the Saturday, go onto YouTube, find our page.
Yeah.
You will find us. We'll give you a reminder of it the day before. We'll do a little podcast just to remind you. But click in and you will have I'm hearing Bernard Jackman.
Bernard Jackman and Keane Tracy.
The
dream team.
I was not a fan of watch-alongs until the Overlap did one, and now
I'm not a fan of Bernard Jackman.
I'm obsessed with them. You sync the clock to your TV and then just watch away. You guys chat away. Now, Roger and Warburton and Dan Bigger,
we're competing with good guys.
They've been good. But nonetheless.
Yeah, no, so to be fair, we've tried the tech out. We're going to have a running clock scoreboard, so it should be hopefully seamless enough to sync up with us. But it won't just be the watch along during the game. We're going to have pre-match, halftime, post-match. So if you want to get an Irish flavour outside of the Sky Sports coverage, we will be providing that. You can get it on YouTube, as you said, Irish Independent website as well. I'm sure it'll be well signposted. It's a bit of an experiment. Will people want to have us as a second screen during the game? Potentially.
I'll second screen that for sure. And the halftime thing is even great. You know what I mean? The halftime would be brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. So we're providing kind of a one-stop shop. It'll be interesting even doing it. The test run, it'll be funny. Because we're not commentating on the game, so obviously don't watch this if you need to know who's making a break, who's making a turnover. We won't be reacting it quite like that, but we'll just be giving our thoughts, our take, Bernard's expert analysis, Keane's insight into everything we're seeing on our TV screen, everything you're watching. Nice. So I'm looking forward to it. It should be fun.
I'm told if numbers drop below a certain level, will sing as well.
Yeah. The Power of Four, that was Clive Woodward's anthem in 05. I've learned off the words for that. So as a child, I loved it. So
okay, cool. So that's for test one.
That's for test one. And then, look, we'll see what happens after that.
So if it never sees the light of day again, what does that mean?
Yeah, if we don't come back for test two, it can't be your fault, listeners. You didn't give us the requisite support.
It couldn't be topped. They figured.
Yeah.
It's a masterpiece. Leave it be.
Exactly. No, so I'm looking forward to it. It should be fun. I haven't done one before, so it'll be good crack.
Okay, cool. Let's go to Ruaidhri O'Connor, who is waiting patiently, full-time whistle, and Eddie O'Sullivan as well. So, as mentioned, Eddie O'Sullivan with us, Ruaidhri O'Connor with us, Ruaidhri dressed in hat, scarf, coat. Are you a bit soft, or is it actually that cold?
I may have over-wrapped up, but Canberra is renowned for being cold. I believe down in the pitch it was really cold because the wind got up today. There was a warning sent out to people's phones for local sheep herders to look after their flocks tonight because the temperatures are going to drop and there's a chilly wind. But no, it was I think 12 years ago when the Lions lost here, there was sleet and snow. It wasn't anywhere near that bad, and it's not too bad. I'm probably a little bit soft, but I mean I have come out in the middle of summer to this, and the other cities have been a bit more benign. So I failed to prepare, prepared to fail.
Yeah. Lions 36, Brumbies 24. Eddie, sort of in keeping with this tour, mixed performance by the Lions, you'd say?
I'd say underwhelming, really, to be honest, against that standard of opposition. The Brumbies threw everything at them, but you could see as the game wore on, they were running out of puff. Their bench was a lot weaker. I mean, the Lions should have polished these guys off pretty comfortably in the second half. It's always going to be tough in the first half because these teams come at you, they throw everything at you, but they eventually run out of gas. And I just think the Lions are not firing at the moment, and it's interesting, listen to the Sky commentary because they're very positive about the Lions. It's everything's building, everything's coming, it's going to be great. But at the back of it, they're very nervous. The guys talking about what do they need to do in training to up the standard, up the tempo, the breakdown, up the energy. They seem flat, really. This seems like a flat team at the moment, and they're playing mediocre opposition. So there's really no swashbuckling rugby which we're expecting from these guys. Again, today's performance, I mean, the Brumbies had a little more depth, a little better kicking game. They might have actually nipped it, you know. So I think there's a bit of a cool chill setting them at the Lions. They're talking it up, but behind the scenes, you can watch the players' body language as well at the end. There was nobody poking and laughing and high five, and everyone was very somber. That was my take on it. So I think at the moment it's not a, let's say, the happiest of environments. And I don't mean there's any uh, you know, dismissive guys going around and complaining and this and that. But I think it's just to begin to worry a little that this may not be what they thought it was going to be. That's my view on it at the moment. I don't see them that the engine is running like a well-oiled machine we're hoping for.
Yeah. What you make of them today, Rud?
Yeah, similar enough. I thought Stephen Larkham was probably the man of the match. I thought his team looked well prepared, and I'd say he may have been working with Joe Schmidt a little bit in the background to try a couple of things, because essentially this was the test side, and Joe was here, and I caught up with Larkham on Monday, and he said he works quite closely with Joe. He would preferred if Joe given him his 8 Wallabies. I reckon if the Brumbies had their full team out here tonight, they could have taken down the Lions test team, because Eddie's right. They're bringing lads. One of the props they brought off the bench is a club player in America. They were so stuck for front rows. He's an Australian guy they've brought back to play in this game. Another one that's making his debut for the Brumbies. They rate him highly, but you're talking about him coming on against experienced test internationals, and even a little bit like Saturday, they got a bit of punch off the bench, but it fizzled out then, and they're not finishing their tries. They're getting over the line, but they're not scoring. There is good stuff. Like, there's definitely good stuff. The scrum was good. The line out was good. The halfbacks look very good. They're winning collisions when they go direct. And some of the scores they put together, like the Ringrose 1-2 at Marcus Smith, like the try that went through 8 sets of hands, I think 6 of whom were Irish, for James Lowe in the corner. Like, they were lovely passages of play. But the Wallabies won't give them. I know the Wallabies aren't brilliant, but they're better than these Super Rugby teams. They're the sum of all of those parts, and you would think there's going to be less time and space, less opportunity, and Joe Schmidt will have picked out several flaws in the Lions' game and exploit those flaws. I think their aerial game is definitely right for the pick. And Blair Kinghorn's, he didn't look good coming off knee injury. Played on for about 10 minutes, but he thumped the ground when he went down with it initially, and struggled on. Like, you can't have Marcus Smith anywhere near fullback in a test match. You could see that Larkham was prepared for it. They went after him straight away. He's such a strange footballer. He's a brilliant player with ball in hand, but without the ball, he just goes missing and makes bad decisions. So, like, Farrell's running out of time to fix all of this. I think it's going to end up being an Irish-heavy, direct approach, because that's going to be what he falls back on in the end, because they're the players who know what he wants from them. And the others, apart from, say, Itoje, Finn Russell, and one or two others, not many of them, are not really grabbing their opportunity. But you couldn't say the Irish lads are massively tearing up trees either, but they haven't been for a year.
Yeah. Eddie, maybe box off the Kinghorn one. So he obviously had a good day the last day. It kind of at fault for the first Brumbies try. Didn't catch a fairly routine restart, but as Rudd said, went off injured. Smith came on, just not a fullback, like very narrow for the Corey Toole try, needlessly narrow. And so I would think Hugo Keenan's just perked up a little bit should Kinghorn miss out, yeah?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I don't think Marcus Smith can start to test the fullback. I think it's be a moment of insanity to pick him. He's not a fullback. He's a 10. And he has his weaknesses at 10. I think he's pensioned for kicking the ball away from under the front foot. He kicked the ball away 3 times tonight. Now, one turned into a try, but it was a barn burner of a line break. And all those plays, you've got to look for your support lines. And he puts a grubber through for Ringrose, who had made the initial break. But, like, that's a low percentage play on a line break. And he kicked one into the first half. He kicked it away into the corner. Now they got the ball back and they scored. He scored. You know, he to me, he's not a full back. Just getting back to the point, he's not a full back. He's a 10 at best, and he's not a test full back. So I don't know what they're doing, wandering around out there at that position or coming off the bench. Unless they really are seriously consider him as a full back for a test, I don't see it. And in the air, he's vulnerable as well. It's not his forte. Out halves are never good in the air anyway. So that's a problem area for them. I don't know. I think Kinghorn could be in trouble. My experience with that guys getting the injury like that, he looked like he was very sore. it doesn't have to be a bad injury because the time the clock's against them. Like, if it's a 2 week injury, you miss the first test minimum. So I think Keenan has to be the next man up. But I think just going back to what Rory said, I agree with him that what happened today. But the problem for the Lions now, if they're depending on dominating the set piece and the scrum as they have against these teams, I don't believe like that dominance against the Wallabies. I don't see it unless something really dangerous happens. The Wallabies have a decent scrum. They're winning collisions, against weakened opposition. That makes life very easy. And that's the space and time that Russell's getting on the ball to pull the strings. I think that goes away in the test game, or there's a lot less of it. So the things that are getting the Lions over the line in these games may not emerge for them in a test game. They won't get as much go forward. They won't get the dominance in the set piece, particularly the scrum. And the defence will be smarter. And like some of the best players that the Lions pull off, so they win a lot of collisions in a row, and then the defence, gets narrow, and then, time and space and the outside channels, and it looks really impressive. But it's what you'd expect, and a lot more of it against these teams. Now, let's also put a bit of context here on this. They're playing Australia now in a test series, right? And everyone's, maybe Australia could pull this off. If this tour was in South Africa or New Zealand, there'd be panic setting in. Let's be honest. Let's be honest here. At the moment, Australia are ranked 8th in the world, right? They should have lost to Fiji last weekend. You had one of the most bizarre TMO interventions where, like, in short, basically Australia took a quick line out, took a quick play to counter-attack. They lost the ball. Fiji scored. A wall went all the way back because the Australian player had his foot in touch. So Fiji actually had a try turned over, nothing that they did wrong. So that would have made a 2-score game. So in essence, like, Fiji could have beaten Australia last weekend in Newcastle. Also, they've lost their starting out half. Yeah. No Lolioso. Like, if this is why, if I would say, if the Lions don't win this test series, it will be a bigger disaster than 05. Let's be honest here. Let's call it what it is. Like, if we were in New Zealand at the moment, or we were in South Africa, there would be panic setting in based on the way that this Lions team is playing. But because it's Australia and the opposition is softer, and we're getting results, everyone wants to be optimistic. But I would say I think we'll still win the series, but I wouldn't be saying this is one of the greatest Lions successes of all time, no matter what. That's my take on it. It's a bit of a dampener on the tour, but we have to put the context on it as well.
No, I think that's right. I'm similar ballpark. I'm struggling to get much out of these games, Rudd, and equally I'm struggling to get too worried at the same time because it is Australia waiting at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, I think Joe Schmidt's doing an awful lot of heavy lifting for the series, and the spectre of a man we all know so well in terms of what he can deliver and the performances he can get out of a team. But at the end of the day, Joe Schmidt can't go out there and tackle Bundy Aki, and he can't play it himself at 10, and it's a major asterisk that's hanging over this tour, is that Australian rugby. I spent the afternoon at Matt Hanson's old rugby club down at kind of a lunch this afternoon, and it's hard to escape the sense that it's in decline. And they were talking about how difficult it is to retain players in the face of other sports, and the 10s. It's kind of come home to roost in this 10 situation where Eddie Jones fast track Carter Gordon, brought him to the World Cup, ditched him, and now he's playing rugby league. And it looks like they may even end up going back to a Bernard Foley or James O'Connor for the test series, backing up Ben Donaldson, who, hasn't convinced. None of these 10s have convinced. And the Australia, a country that had Larkham, Michael Lina is going into, this once every 12-year event with no really outstanding out half in the team. And they're kind of going to have to try and do it without him. They've got doubts over Skelton, who they brought back from France. They got doubts over Rob Valentini. I think that they'll just do everything they can to get them on the pitch, but their areas of strengths are probably the Lions' areas of strengths as well. So Eddie's right. The expectation is all on the Lions in this tour, and it's all on Andy Farrell's shoulders to deliver, having been given, carte blanche, as all Lions coaches are, to do it his own way, and to pick a lot of Irish coaches, to pick a lot of Irish players. The expectation. It's not often the Lions arrive down in a place like this, and they're expected to do it, and they're expected to do it 3-0, quite frankly. So the thing is that they're not really. I asked them on whatever day, I've lost track of the days, but before this match, I asked him, did he feel like he was, where he wanted to be with it, and he gave a bit of he fudged it really. I guess he wasn't going to tell me if he didn't think they were, but I can't imagine the on pitch performances are reflecting where he wanted to be when he closed his eyes and thought about where this whole tour was going to be, because they're still making the same kind of mistakes they were making against Argentina. They had 20 visits to the 22 today. They only scored 5 tries, and that's against a really game Brumbies team, and they deserve praise for pitching up and playing the way they did, and the way that Munster have often done, without their Ireland internationals against the All Blacks or the Maori in games like that. So there is an element of local pride. The biggest crowd Canberra's had at a rugby game since 2005. It's a big event, and it meant a lot to the players. But at the end of the day, the Lions can't get caught up in that. This was supposed to be the test match team giving a test match performance, and we even saw them take the points in the second half penalty, which was almost a kind of a sign that they've moved into a new phase of the tour. But they haven't built the performances and the cohesion that they would have looked ideally to have at this point. And we're still going into Saturday's game against an AUNZ selection that's actually looking really, really strong. And there's loads of places up for grabs in the test team after that.
Yeah. So
I
shoot, Eddie, yeah.
Farrell, I just watched his post match interview there, and it was a bit all over the place. He was the Sky reporter she was asking pretty straightforward questions. What are you going to do with the breakdown? What about the energy of the team, and is this test selection up so the side or just spots up for grabs and all this? And he basically dodged everything. He just fobbed everything off and gave the usual pat answers, like boilerplate answers about working hard and training and putting the guys together stuff. But his body language looked like a guy who was really a bit perturbed with what was going on, and watching the coach's box as well, watching the body language in the coach's box. I've been in that hot seat myself often enough, and it's not a happy camp in there. Like everyone's very uptight. A lot of furrowed brows there throughout the game, and like they've got out of jail cards as well in that game today. Like that try before halftime that gave them a bit of breathing space came off a Brumbies turnover. So there's a lot of things pointing at the moment that they could lose a test here, which would be a disaster. And this should not happen against the caliber of opposition they're facing. But it's not a settled camp. It doesn't look like a happy camp in terms of they're happy about how they're playing the game or what they're trying to do on the field. And there's a lot of worry there. So I think Rory's on the ground there. He might get a better sense of the atmosphere. But I just watch him, and you can see from afar, it doesn't look to me like this is locked and loaded by any stretch.
I agree with you in the coach's box. You could see they're a little bit short with each other, furrowed brows, and like the Brumbies gifted them 2 tries in the first half. There was they overplayed in their own half, and it led to a scrum for Chessum's opening try. And then you mentioned just before the break, like when they're only 2 points behind, restart and they go short. Like like you just can't believe this if you're Larkham, and so then they go in 9 points down, and it's a very different game. Just on the Irish corner, fellas, if we take it that this is approximate to the test team, I'm not sure anyone's played themselves out of the team either. Like I thought Ringrose looked uber classy, Aki alongside him absolutely fine, James Lowe really, really good, Gibson Park is Gibson Park, he's nailed on. Sheehan, strange line out, which led to a Brumbies try. Strange overthrown line out in the 22, but like by the same token, he's there fending off players. A fella on the right wing and making 30 metres and just his dynamic self. Furlong looks to be warming to the task. His body looks good. If there's a bolter here, it is Joe McCarthy. Again, didn't do much wrong at all. Conan, absolutely fine. Great hands for the low try. And then if Hugo Keenan does get the call, Rudd, are we at them? And I wouldn't say Tom Curry's absolutely nailed down his shirt either. Are we looking at 9-10 starters here, Rudd?
Yep, I think so. And I think if you were looking at this 6 weeks out, you probably thought that's the way he was going to go. I certainly wouldn't be writing Josh van der Fleer off. I wouldn't be writing Mac Hansen off. Didn't think Freeman was exceptional tonight. It depends on how panicked he is, and how the more worried he is, the more Irish players he's going to pick in the team, because they know what he wants. Andrew Porter, did Ellis Genge nail it tonight?
Oh, crazy.
Scrum was good. He's been good.
Crazy penalty as well.
Yeah, you kind of always, especially on an Lions tour, and I'm surrounded by English journalists all the time. You're wary of being overly parochial when we do sit down over a beer and talk about the test team. But the more you see, and the more you know about this coach and these players, that like it's a lot about trust, and he trusts the Irish players because they've done it for him before. Tyke Byrne, if he comes in and plays well on Saturday, he's right in the mix because Chesham did a lot of things right today, but I didn't think he looked overly comfortable in the role of six in terms of where he was supposed to be at times. Now he bangs in contact, he's a big physical presence, and he played well, but I don't think he nailed it either. So if there's a 50-50, what way is he going to go? Is he going to go to the guy that he's coached 50 times, in some cases 100 times, or is he going to go a guy he met a couple of weeks ago and is still learning a system? That's a really difficult thing for him to do, because if it goes wrong, it's going to be held up against him. And the '05 parallels, I think, are there. Like Eddie was right to bring it up earlier, and I found your chat with Eddie a couple of weeks ago fascinating on it. Like, the more he goes down that route and goes down what got him here, which Scotland did as well. In fairness, Scotland always, the third test here in 13, he went for the Welsh core. He dropped O'Driscoll, dropped Heaslip, went with a heavy Welsh team. So it's not like this is rocket science or in any way kind of a new thing for Andy Farrell to do. But I think I don't think they've built a lot of goodwill with the media over here. They don't do much media. It's not we don't see an awful lot of them. So I think it could turn quite quickly as well. And whatever that means in 2020, in 2025 media market, I think it could turn quite quickly if things start to go wrong. And the more, but I think Owen will come into the mix. I think he'll definitely be seen as someone who can come in and could control a game for the last 20 minutes to lend a voice. Like the way Johnny Sexton talked about Owen Farrell yesterday, it was emphatic of how big an impact they think he can have, but there's no on-pitch evidence of it because he hasn't played for so long. So there's still an awful lot of 10 days out from the first test. There are huge question marks, and I think his instinct is going to be go with the guys he knows, and that's going to be quite exciting from an Irish point of view because we could have Finn Russell and 14 Irish lads in a starting team. I don't think it can quite go that far, but at the same time, it's not like Ireland and Leinster have been brilliant, and a lot of these players are from Ireland and Leinster. So it's, in recent history, they've obviously achieved an awful lot under Farrell. So it's placing a lot of pressure on a thing that hasn't been going that well for the last little while.
Well, it's funny, that low try on 28 minutes, which put them in front. Great hands from Joe McCarthy. Went to Finn Russell, who went to Aki. Short line off Ringrose, he carried, went to Sheehan, drew a man, went to Conan, went to James Lowe. So that was Finn Russell in an Irish team. Eddie, a word from you on those Irish 8 today and how you think it's shaping up?
See, I think all the Irish guys did a good job today. I thought Ringrose looked classy. I think the problem he has is Ringrose is outside centre, end of. He doesn't have an outside centre, really. That's it. Like, all the other centres are more like 12s. Aki, of course, edges it, maybe, so I think that could be an Irish midfield with Russell. I think Lowe still in the mix, left foot as well, very good for exits, good finisher, although he should have done better today with that first opportunity. He shouldn't have got held up. Maybe he wasn't, but he's never been in doubt. But by and large, I think Freeman didn't set it on fire. But he's got to be really careful. It's just what the stuff we talked about before the tour, the balance. If he pulls the trigger and goes green on this, right, they have to win. They have to win. If he goes green and they lose the first test, man, all hell will break loose. Like, the British media will go berserk. Hard to blame him, but we would do the same if it was all English and they lost, So he's playing a very dangerous game with that. So and Rory is right, when you're under pressure like that, you're going to back the horses can bring it in for you. And again, I think, I go back, it's not a huge risk. Like, Ireland could beat Australia tomorrow. It should, with Australia.
I have that thought all the time, and it completely undermines the tour for me.
It does, yeah. Like, if this was South Africa, or we're going into Dunedin next weekend, or you were going up to Bloemfontein for this, there'd be a different chill around the camp, But look, it is what it is. But if he does go down the green route, he has to win, and he could do it. He could pull it off. Like Gatlin pulled it off as well. As Roy said, in Australia, he went heavy with Wales. That was a great Welsh team at the time, and they brought it home for him. But the potential for the thing to come off the race, I think the Owen Farrell thing as well is a really dangerous one for him, because it's not like he lost a midfielder and he brought in a midfielder. He lost a full back and he brought in a midfielder. Now, by any, I mean, I don't know, right? You might be able to throw some light on this because I was looking around but I didn't get all the details. I saw the over and back at the press conference. It seemed to be about Owen Farrell's match fitness more than anything. The question I would love to have asked, I'm not a journalist, but to me it was a rugby question: is what was the logic in bringing out a fly half stroke 12 to fix a player that you had lost who was a 15 wing? And I don't know if that question was asked or it was. I'd love to know what his answer to it is. That was, to me, is the core question. After that, okay, like, is he match fit or not? It's a secondary issue,
Yeah, I think what he said there was that he had Keenan and Kinghorn, and he had Marcus Smith can play a bit of fullback, so he has cover there if needed. So he had 2.5 fullbacks. Hansen can play fullback if they need him to do that as well, and he was happy with the coverage there. But he kind of talked a little bit about being light at 12. Now he has seen only
It's
Tupelodo
3-12 at the
and
moment.
yeah, well, yeah, Hugh Jones I think is more of a 13, but I think Ringrose can play a bit of 12 if he needs be. They wanted Owen here for the leadership. I think they think it's a quiet group. It's a quiet group that doesn't have a whole lot of Lions series experience. It's certainly in crowds. There's not a lot of people on their third tour. It's really only Furlong. Now that Elliot Daly's gone, it's Furlong and Maro Itoje. The last Lions series was a weird one. It was in COVID. It was a very strange experience. And also, like, I mean, who does he trust more in the world? Forget about the Irish players and trusting the Irish players. He was always going to call up Owen Farrell. I think they would have found a way. And
Can I jump in there, Ruud?
he kind of found, yeah.
I was just going to say, I think he's just lost faith in the other two tens. Like Marcus Smith,
Yes.
it's Marcus Smith's not an Andy Farrell player. The shortcomings are just too obvious. And even last day out, as good as Finn Smith has been this season, when the game the last day out called for, let's settle things down, be a bit more direct, Finn Smith is popping little left-footed kicks through, giving the ball away. I heard one or two other on the BBC podcast. They were wondering, like, Finn Smith. You have to understand these are trial games in a way, and he's got Van der Merwe outside him and other big characters outside him saying, "You give me the ball." And maybe instead of doing what Owen Farrell would do, which is saying, "You shut up, I'll give you the ball when I think you need the ball," and playing proper direct rugby when it was required, Finn Smith may be a little bit like, "Oh, I'll do what they say." It's hard when you're getting to know new players to assert yourself to that extent. I honestly think Farrell's looked at the two of them and said, if Finn Russell got injured early doors here, I don't fully trust either of them. Owen, in you come. That'd be my read.
I think you've
Yeah,
nailed
no,
it there,
absolutely.
Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Joe's
Yeah.
nailed it there. I think you're right because I think that he's at a point now where if anything happens to Russell, the wheels could come off, and that's his big fear, and he doesn't trust the two boys. And I get why he wouldn't, but the question is then is why wait for an injury that may never have come?
Yeah.
Like, the truth is, this is really bad planning, like, in terms of his
You
position.
think, Eddie, it's only when you work with someone like Marcus or Finn, the two Smiths, it's maybe after a week or two with them, then you think to yourself, yeah, you need to see them up close first. Could that be part of it?
I think I've seen enough. I think Marcus Smith is a mercurial player, but he's not. I would say most forwards would prefer somebody else at 10 because he plays really off the cuffs too much. He's unpredictable, has a lot of talent. I think Finn Russell is like he's basically they're banking on him. That's it. Like, that's all around him. And Finn Smith, I think he's come through very quickly, and I think that's the one where he thought he could bank on Finn Smith, and he now saw the cracks appearing, and he's not comfortable anymore. And he had a chance now to back himself up with Owen coming in, and he's taken it. But it's a bit ironic that it took an injury to a full back for that could happen.
So probably
It's
a good,
like Pollard coming into the World Cup.
yeah.
For
Yes,
South Africa.
yeah.
Pollard was at home watching it, and then there's an injury at hooker, and Pollard starts at 10. Like, there's an injury at full back here, and Owen Farrell could end up
Would you
starting
say
at
then?
10.
So would you say then a good decision and like politically brave, because if it goes wrong, he gets pilloried. But like a good brave decision under the circumstances.
Yeah, I think so. On the back of it, if you're on the money, and I think you are vis-a-vis Marcus Smith and Finn Smith, I think he's now realised that they're not test 10 material, and he's covered himself with Owen, and it's a smart thing to do, in the circumstances. But it'll be tricky then when he put on the bench for the first test, because if there's an injury after 10 minutes or 5 minutes, who's going to start in the 10. You know that's that'll be very interesting if he does that.
Yeah. Sorry, Rod, you were trying to
I
get in
think he
there.
has
Yeah.
to. Yeah, I think he has to. I think the experience, the leadership thing is a big part of it as well, and it's a big factor in this thing that we've been talking about every week of the season about Ireland's tens, Crowley versus Prendergast. They're trying to fill the Sexton void, and for whatever reason, the Andy Farrell system requires a strong organising presence at 10. And Russell's able to do it in his own style, and he has Gibson Park helping alongside. I think they trust Russell to get it done, but they also want that second voice. They want a leader. I think it's a quiet group, and they want that big voice that like Sexton, when he was first asked, when he was doing it before he was the Lions coach, said he thought Owen Farrell should be the Lions 10. And I think they've kind of engineered this weird situation where I don't understand why they didn't name him in the first place. Like, it's such an awkward thing to talk about. Farrell hates talking about Owen. Owen hates talking about Andy. It's just this weird. Maybe it's not weird, but they've manufactured this thing where they're just not comfortable talking about each other in public. So it's become this thing that they've almost been trying to avoid. It felt like they kind of manufactured this way of leaving Owen out of the initial squad announcement because he'd be a lightning rod for all the criticism. But if they just ripped off the band-aid then and got him over here, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Now, maybe he wasn't fit to come in the first place, but he would have had a couple of weeks within the group. So instead, they've broken the glass, they've called him up, and he's coming in. And I expect him to be involved in this game on Saturday. I expect him to start if he is fit, because what's the point otherwise? And if he plays well in what against a disorganized but an opposition that's full of really good players, you know, current and former All Blacks, current and former Wallabies, um, then he's right. I just don't see any way he doesn't play in that number 22 jersey, because if they build a lead, they'll want on alongside Russell and 10 and have a
I
10-12, because I'm not sure Aki has 80 minutes in him at test level.
Okay.
I think as well, Rory, that I still think there's a little question mark over Finn Russell. I know at the moment he's nailed in as he's nailed in as a starting 10, but he hasn't been under any pressure. And we've seen him with Scotland when he comes under a certain amount of pressure. He does unravel a bit at times. He does force the game too much. And he hasn't been put under that pressure. I would think George Schmidt's going to go after him, try and get in his head, try and get into him. Because if Russell starts to wobble, the whole team is in big trouble because it's so dependent on him to run the game. And he's doing a great job at the moment. I'm not taking anything away from him. He's nailed in to start the test, but he hasn't really been put to the test yet. I think that's a pressure point for George Schmidt. I'd be shocked if there isn't extra attention to Russell. They might put shooters on top of him. They might play a blitz in that zone. They might just to try and upset him, because we know when he loses, when his game gets ruffled a bit, he takes risks that he shouldn't take. He actually becomes more extravagant with the ball instead of calming things down.
No, fair
And
point.
you know, I just think that I'm not suggesting for Roman he shouldn't start test. He is nailed in. But I think if I was Joe Schmidt, I'd be going after him and see what happens and see if you can upset him. And
fair
that would
point.
be a big turning point.
Last one to you both. Rod, I know you got to run to press conference and everything. This is a tricky question to answer, and I'll ask it to you both again at the end of the series. But just, I don't know, Rory. It's on account of the weakness of Australia, as opposed to an extent 12 years ago, and certainly back 01. The whole thing has been very, very underwhelming. I don't want to, go all Ben Cavalier on this, but like not having the Wallabies as part of the warm-up games, these games have been kind of non-events. They've been frustrating, like 8 Wallabies missing today. You outlined the short in the front row. Like, I'm not sure in 12 years, like, don't sign me up for that again necessarily, unless there's a real resurgence in Australian rugby. I don't know. The Lions is always never far away from an existential crisis. And it's not their own doing in this instance, it's more an Australian thing. But I think we're back into a conversation at the end of this tour, unless these tests really catch fire.
Yeah, it hasn't caught fire. And this game was on at the same time as State of Origin was on. And no one in Australia was watching this match. The only people who were watching this match really were the diehards and the 25,000 people who were here, and the people who were able to get a screen and work back home or work from home for the day so they could keep an eye on it. So they didn't do this as any favors either in that regard. So you've definitely got questions to answer. Like, there's a lot of talk about a Tour de France. I think that would be magnificent on paper, certainly if you were rolling around La Rochelle, Bordeaux, Toulouse, playing against top club teams. But again, you're gonna run into some of the same problems, and there's too many games in the rugby season, and all the different factors. Like there's insurance reasons for some players not being involved, and not being able to bring back guys back from Japan, and complications. But Australia is not as strong as New Zealand or South Africa, and the regional teams in in New Zealand and South Africa probably would have taken down this Lions team. I guess there's no harm in the Lions being the favourites once every so often in the Test series, and I think if we have a Test series where Australia play above themselves and deliver and make it 1-1, if they pick off one of the first two tests and we have a decider, well, then we'll have a lot to talk about. And it'll be kind of like 2013 wasn't a classic Lions series, but it came down to a decider, so it had a level of excitement. But like the Lions should have won that series. They did win that series. There was obviously drama with the O'Driscoll thing and all of that as well. But yeah, it's not. I don't get the sense it's catching a lot of fire back home. It's certainly not catching fire here. But we're rolling into the bit where it probably will next week when he's picking a team for a Test match against Australia. And like the tests aren't sold out as far as maybe Brisbane is, but the other two aren't, and that maybe depends on how well the Wallabies go because there's not a lot of faith in them locally. So it's a strange dynamic. Um, and yeah, I don't know how much of a part the Lions are playing in terms of reaching out to Australia and making connections because really they're just kind of holed away in hotels all the time or on flights. They're not. I don't know how much of a connection they're making outside of these matches. So it's kind of a weird is winning matches, not playing particularly well. And yeah, here we are. With 10 days to go, but the series could rescue it all if we'll have lots to talk about it, but just to be a bit of a damn squib because it's supposed to be the ultimate challenge, and it's not looking like that right now.
Yeah. Final word, Eddie.
Yeah, I think there's two problems with this. One is that Australia's in a bad place. I mean, I saw a video up on social media where someone flipped through the sports pages of the major sports newspaper in Australia, and you went through 13. You had to get to page 13 of the sports edition to get to the Lions. That's like it just doesn't on the map there, and I'm actually surprised they didn't bump this game back to forward to Tuesday night because of the state of origin. We might have some more eyes on it, but maybe it made no difference. But that's the problem in Australia. Australia are not favourites; they're underdogs. Then they weaken their provincial teams to play the Lions, so they're damn squibs. And the problem then is the Lions are not playing that well, so it's hard to talk this up. I guess what could probably ignite it would be bad for the Lions if Australia won the first test. that would certainly light a torch, and then the Australians get interested straight away, and then we're all sitting at the edge of our seat wondering, "Jesus, how can they screw this up?" So maybe that's the way to light this. But if the Lions could cruise this 3-0 without actually performing like a Lions team needs to, those iconic Lions performances may not happen, and they could still win the Test series, and that's I think what people are thinking. So at the moment, it's mediocre at best. Hard to get too excited about it, and we're rugby nerds, and if we're saying that, what's it mean to the average punter who dips in and out?